Hi, gang. Welcome back. Okay, so today we're going to start talking about speciation and species. We last were talking about all of the people who have come after Darwin and kind of paved the way for us to understand where we come from and where these things come from. But something that we've kind of tiptoed around already is the term speciation, or what a species actually is. So let's get into that. First of all, speciation and where new species comes from is based on the idea of what a species is. Well, the easiest way to define or delineate a species is to call them anything that is reproductively isolated from anything else. So members of different species cannot breed. They don't share enough genes, or what genes they do share are too dissimilar. What makes this happen? Well, reproductive isolation is exactly what it sounds like. It is two groups that are unable to interbreed because they're isolated from one another. Um, this can be because they've been separated for a long time, so the two breeds don't really have much in common anymore. It could also be that they are literally separated. So you could have two similar species that have just been separated. And technically, we would call that reproductive isolation, but it's in a different form. And we'll talk about what that means in a second. So, for example, all living chimpanzees and all living humans share a common ancestor. Why can't we interbreed with chimps? Don't think it hasn't been tried. There were literally some Soviet experiments on trying to create chimp human hybrid soldiers because chimps do have a much higher muscle to weight ratio than we do. So they thought, hey, we can make super soldiers if we can interbreed them. I don't know how they were trying to do it, but guess what? It does not work. Do you remember that magic number of chromosomes we talked about before? That modern humans have 46 chromosomes, 23 from your mom, 23 from your dad. Well, chimps actually don't have the same amount of chromosomes. Our DNA literally cannot mix. We are so reproductively isolated from them and have been for so long that we literally cannot interbreed with chimps. The key here is, and really the key with everything that we're going to talk about, is time. Humans and chimps had a last common ancestor over 7 million years ago. That's a long time. We can't even comprehend what 7 million years is like. We live somewhere between 80 to 100 years. A million years, 1,000 years is inconceivable. That's 10 long lifetimes. And then you've got to multiply that by 1,000 more to get a million, and then multiply that by 7 to get 7 million. It is inconceivable for our little brains to comprehend what 7 million years ago is. Simplest explanation, though, not the only one for how a species is created. From one species, you can split them and create two separate species. The easiest form of this, the easiest model, is called the allopatric model. So what does allopatric mean? Allo means different. The opposite of that is sim, like sympathy. Sympatric would be the opposite. Peri and para are very similar to each other, and we're not really going to get into that. Patrick literally means fatherland. So allo means different homeland. Okay? Allopatric means different homeland. That means they're separated. Let me give you a very easy, very kind of lowbrow idea of what this means. The allopatric speciation model is the easiest one to fully comprehend. The rest of them I'm never going to test you on, but just know that sympatric is the opposite of allopatric. Peri and para I threw in there because it's good that you have exposure to those, but we're not going to go into them. There is so much detail in differentiating these things out, and as to which species is defined by which one and how we do that. Literally, can take you several semesters to start to comprehend in grad school. You might get there. You may not be interested. I wasn't all that interested, although I had to take these classes in graduate school. But let me tell you, it's not exciting. The easiest model is allopatric speciation model. So this is a really, really simplistic image here. I stole this from some textbook a long time ago. So let's look at it. I want you to imagine this egg shape, this kind of beige egg. That's our island. Okay, and on that island, you see these little purple triangles everywhere. We're going to call those lizards. And we can take this lizard over here, and we're going to call him Phil. And this lizard over here, we're going to call her Nikki, because Phil and Nikki, a couple of friends of mine, wanted me to put them into a lecture of some sort. So there you go, Phil and Nikki. So Phil and Nikki are lizards living on this tropical island, okay? This egg-shaped island. Now, what can happen, and what actually does happen in real life, is something physically changes in the landscape that splits a given population. So here we've got Phil and Nikki. Phil can easily make his way over to Nikki and make babies with Nikki, right? But let's say one day, and it can happen in a very short period of time, a mountain range pops up. That's what this squiggly white line is. It's a mountain range. I know, use your imagination. So can Phil now, here he is, can he get past this mountain range to get over to Nikki? No. And the reason I make this a mountain range and not anything else is because it helps us fully understand what's going on. We live here in Southern California. And in Southern California, we have what's called a rain shadow caused by the mountains that are in between us on the coastal side and the inland deserts like Nevada, Arizona. They are in what's called a rain shadow, meaning we get all the rain, and then by the time the clouds get over the mountains, over to the other side, there's no more rain left in them, really. So they're a desert, we're not. Okay, so what I'm saying there is that Nikki's side of the island is going to be the rain shadow side, I think. And Phil's side is going to be where all the rain drops. So what's going to happen over time? Oh, sorry, it was the other way around. Nikki's side is the rain side. Phil's side is the rain shadow side. So Nikki's side is getting all the rain. And what's going to happen to these lizards over time? They're going to adapt to their new, wetter environment. Meanwhile, on Phil's side, they're going to adapt to their new, drier climate. Does that make sense? So now, Nikki and Phil's offspring, thousands of generations down, have started to adapt. Nikki's side, which is over here, have become much more water-loving lizards, whereas Phil's group over here are much more desert-dwelling lizards. And over thousands of generations, these changes continue to happen and become more and more pronounced. So when those mountains eventually disappear, and Phil's group can come over here and start mingling with Nikki's group again, they're now two separate. They've been living and adapting to two separate areas for too long, so that they are no longer compatible. They are too different to interbreed. Does that make sense? That's the allopatric model. And the last thing I want to leave you with on this very, very short chat is the speciation rule. If two species, in other words, two groups of the same species, are separated for more than 50,000 generations, now keep in mind, we're saying generations, not years. 50,000 generations, which in human populations, a generation is roughly 20 years, right? So from birth to about 20 before you start making babies of your own, usually. So if you multiply 50,000 times 20, that's about 1,000,000 years. So after 1,000,000 years in humans, or 50,000 generations, if we're talking about the deserted island lizards, 50,000 generations, or In our case, a million years, we are no longer able to interbreed. Now, here's something to think about. Anatomically modern humans, you and I, have only been on this planet for just about 300,000 years. In other words, nowhere near the 50,000 generations required to speciate. So no human group can be a separate species from any other human group because not enough time. Since our species came on the planet, we've only been here about a third of the amount of time that it takes for us to speciate away from ourselves. Furthermore, we're humans. We cannot keep it in our pants. Humans cannot stop getting over there and meeting others. In fact, we are so into exploration, but when we run into other people wherever we explore to, we have sex with them. We are a very sexual animal, and as such, there's almost nowhere on this planet where humans could be isolated long enough for a million years. We would have to create, have SpaceX take a big group of people, a colony up to Mars, colonize Mars, and then forget how to fly back to Mars for a million years. That's the only way to keep us apart. And in a million years, we would absolutely, even if we knocked ourselves back to the Stone Age, we would still, within a million years, be able to figure out spaceflight again. So humans never going to speciate away from each other, probably. But other animals and humans have. We know, for example, that all the other primates have speciated away from us for a very, very long time. We've kept our distance from things like chimpanzees for 7 million years, meaning 7 times over we have speciated away from them. We're not even close, and we can no longer reproduce viable offspring. Viable means living offspring. In fact, humans and chimps can't even impregnate each other, even though they're our closest living relative. They're still pretty far away.